Okay guys, so I am back. It's been a while. It's actually been so long since I last sat down and properly talked to you guys. I have been pretty active when it comes to vlogging. Also, I've been really active on Patreon, posting very frequently on there, but yeah, it's been a long time since I have made this kind of video in English, and I'm not gonna update you and tell you all about why, mainly because I've been talking about it on Instagram, on Twitter, in depth and length about it on Patreon, so it's not necessarily, it's not that it's not interesting, it's just that it's out there for you to see if you want. And today I wanted to talk to you about something quite important. Actually, my last video in French is about what I'm going to talk about today, and it caused a lot of controversy, a lot of hatred, a lot of harassment. I've talked about it before as well. I am not sure exactly why my videos in French cause a lot of hatred, a lot of harassment, a lot of threats, a lot of I don't even want to call it negativity, because yes, it's negative, but it's beyond being just negative. It's just people actually harassing me, people actually making videos about me, blog posts about me, people spamming me, people threatening me. And yes, obviously a lot more French people watch my videos, but I don't even think it's a question of proportion, because when I was making a lot of videos in English, and even now making videos in English about feminism, about anti-racism, about veganism and all those things, I never get, even if you're talking about proportion, I never get as much hate, as much threat and harassment. So I don't know what's up with the French community. I think it's because French is pretty much a very old-fashioned country, and it's also because it's a very interesting topic actually. If you're interested, let me know. I could make a video about it, because I feel like in the US and in the UK, for example, or in Australia, I feel like politics are not as good as in France, but it makes it so that a lot of people feel represented by some politics, like shitty people. And so it doesn't create the same kind of frustration as it does in France, because in France a lot of things are forbidden, or you won't hear about certain things on TV or on the mainstream media. And it's like a whole different perspective and atmosphere in the politics and on TV and debates and everything. So yeah. Anyway, so I'm getting off track. Anyway, today I wanted to talk to you about something that was really hard for me to come to terms with. And the video I made in French, I wasn't really wanting to make it. I kind of had to make it because of facts and events that happen punctually, but also because it's something that I've been feeling growing up inside of me for the longest time, and I kind of wanted to share it in English as well, because I think it's important. And basically I want to tell you about what I have noticed in activism or in social justice movements and groups that I kind of disagree with, and what I have seen myself doing as well, because that's mainly what it is about as well, and what I have decided to stop doing, what I have decided to improve. By no means is it like me, softening my feminism, my anti-racism and my veganism, or the very strong support I bring to the queer community, kind of fitting in that as well myself. It's not like I have discovered the truth and I'm gonna be a more moderate person. That's not what it is about. It's just that I feel like you can have very radical and extreme ideas, but the way you portray them and the way you talk about it and the way you share information with people, I think, and the way you get information as well, is important too. And I've seen a lot of things going on, especially on the French Twitter, which are absolutely despicable if you ask me, and I wanted to address it. So the first thing I have noticed is that in a lot of cases the information goes super fast on the internet, and you have access to so many different informations, which is amazing, and I love the internet precisely for that, because in the mainstream media and in the traditional educational system, a lot of the information that you have is selected, is the result of a white dominated male and white dominated history and vision of history, and knowledge and everything, even just if you're talking about literature, which is what I am gonna teach in September. Could make a video about that as well, and what I've been studying for years. You know, even if there are a lot more female students in the classrooms, I would say that the ratio of teachers at uni is quite equal when it comes to men and women. And then the authors and the thinkers and the artists that you study are like 85% males, you know, and white, and possibly straight, but that one is a bit more like not too sure. So, you know, in every aspect of your life, whether you're a very hard science person or whether you're more in humanities, I think it's very clear that the information that we have access to is not absolutely neutral and is not very complete and global. So for that, internet is amazing, but at the same time, I feel like it's so important for us as activists and as feminists and anti-racist and vegans and everything to really, really check our information, make sure the source is accountable, is, you know, a very strong and reliable source, make sure that we take time to understand it, make sure that we take time to build our own opinion and confront it with other, you know, materials, other informations before jumping on the wagon and just having the same opinion as everyone else. I've seen so many cases on Twitter, especially, where people will comment on something they have never even watched or seen or read themselves, and I feel like it's kind of sad. Obviously, there are people who you can trust. There are activists online and that I will respect, and I'm pretty sure if they say something's bad, yeah, it's likely that it's bad. But nonetheless, I think it's important to check your information, to make sure you know what you're talking about. I mean, it sounds so even like obvious, but it's definitely something we tend to forget and we tend to lose on the internet. And it's not only about activism, because it's clearly something that everyone does, because a lot of people go on the internet to get information, not necessarily to share the information and produce like critiques and articles and videos and content, but even just receiving the information. I think it's so important to make sure you know what you're receiving, where it's coming from, who has done it, who has written it, and all those different things. The second thing I really want to emphasize is the context. So as I said in my French video, I think it's something that's debatable, and a lot of people in the activist communities are disagreeing on that. Some people say that context and intentions don't matter. Basically, what you're saying is the only thing that should be taken into consideration. I personally disagree with that. I personally think it's very important to take the context into consideration, and also to just be aware that, you know, you can't really judge someone's life, someone's values and morals and ethics just with one thing they've said. Obviously, there are some things that are quite big, like if someone were to say black people are inferior, yes, you could probably judge them. But if someone is saying something that sounds problematic, or that looks problematic, or that is clearly problematic, but that they haven't said or done anything like this in the past, and actually they've done quite the contrary, I think it's important to take that into consideration. It's also important, I believe, to take intentions into consideration. For example, a few months ago in France, there was a big incident because a French soccer player did a blackface, and he actually had no idea what a blackface was. And you could say that ignorance is not an excuse anymore, and that's totally, you're right. But for me personally, it's clear that this person was not racist. He did something that is racist, yes, but he's not someone who says anything racist on like a daily. He's not someone who advocates for anything but equality, and just, you know, blacklisting him as a racist, as someone who is cancelled, just because he's done something that's, yes, very wrong, but clearly because he's ignorant, I think it's just not a very intellectually valid and interesting thing to do. And that's just my opinion. You're free to disagree, but I tend to do it a lot more nowadays. I think in my first, like, at the beginning of me being very active and very vocal, especially about veganism, maybe I was like, context doesn't really matter, but actually context matters. And it's also important, I believe, to really differentiate the different contexts. For example, when it comes to street harassment and catcalling, we call it street harassment in France, it's called catcalling in English. You know, I worked with migrants, I worked with teenagers, and I worked with adults that come to France on their own. They don't speak French, they don't know anything about French most of the time, and I was teaching them French, and I was seeing them like 3 or 4 times a week. I could actually make videos about that because I think it's such an interesting topic. And anyway, those guys, those men or those young guys, they've come from places, from countries where mixity is not a thing. Like you are, if you're a boy, you're on the right side, and if you're a girl, you're on the left side, and that's all. You're not really encouraged to talk to each other, to play with each other, to flirt with each other. Marriage is a very, very formal and organized thing. You cannot flirt before marriage. A lot of things are considered bad or impure or just wrong when it comes to female bodies and male bodies as well, and pleasure and discussing, and women's rights are not that, you know, are respected and important in those countries. So obviously when they come to France, they have no real idea on how to behave around women. They don't know women, they don't know anything about women. And so I think context here really matters, because if you're like a French man, a French boy who was born in France, raised in France, went to school in France with other girls, have been able to play with girls, interact with girls, and all those things, obviously your experience of feminism, or your experience of different genders being together and how to interact together, is going to be different from someone who's never experienced any of that and doesn't have any knowledge or any code or social code on how to navigate those things. So yes, context really matters, and I feel like, if we are taking it into consideration for marginalized people or minorities, I think it should also be taken into consideration in the other way around. Personally, that's my take on it. The third thing I really want to talk about, and I talked about in my last video, in French again, is the activist purity. I'm not sure it's something that really is used in the English speaking world. I'm not sure how you would phrase it, but basically I'm so tired of this idea that as vegans, as feminists, as anti-racists, as queer allies or queer people, we need to be perfect. We need to be on top of everything. We need to know everything. We cannot be problematic. We're not problematic, and everyone else who's been problematic once or twice is cancelled. I think it's complete bullshit. We all have social constructions that are ingrained in our minds, and we need to deconstruct those, but it's taking a while, and everyone is going through their own process at the same time. So I'm not saying that means you excuse every single person that says or does something that's problematic. I'm just saying you adapt yourself in the ways you want to perhaps educate that person or call out that person. And you always keep in mind that you also do sometimes things that are problematic, because no one's perfect, and that's something really, really important. Actually, as a white, able-bodied person, and as someone who is kind of part of the queer community but really, really doesn't face any discrimination based on that, I've always been very aware of that, because I know I have a lot of things to deconstruct, and I know I have a lot of privilege to be really careful about. But I feel like a lot of people tend to forget that, and it's also sometimes the cause actually of some really problematic behaviors. For example, I've seen this tweet this morning which was about how queer people that are white should not use their queer card in order to deny their white privileges and perhaps sometimes their racist behaviors. And I think it's the same for people of color. Actually, they should not use that card to be homophobic or to be speciest or to be any of those, you know, ugly things, really. And last point that I want to talk about in this video, and I think it's actually another thing about the purity. I'm not sure it's actually a purity thing, but I'm gonna fit it into that category. I am so tired, but like so freaking tired of hearing people say, you're not a woman, so you can talk about feminism. You are not a person of color, so you can talk about racism. You're not someone who wears a veil, so you can talk about that, the hijab or anything like that. So I get it. I know why people say that, and I understand where it comes from, but I highly disagree with it. So obviously, if you're not a woman, you're not gonna get if you're not a woman, and especially if you're like a cis man, you are never gonna understand in your core, in your body, the experience of sexism. You're never gonna know what it feels like to walk alone at home, to walk home alone at night as a girl, or as a non-binary person as well, or as a trans person, for example. You're never gonna know what it feels like to just feel like your body is subjected to everyone's opinions and everyone's approval, and that's your value. You're never gonna know what sexism feels in your flesh. You're never gonna get the understanding in that way of feminism. And I totally agree with that, you know. And we should always listen first to the voices of those who live those oppressions and who have those struggles. But it doesn't mean just because I'm a woman that what I have to say about feminism, what I have to say about gender roles, what I have to say about gender equality is more interesting, more important, more useful, or all the good adjectives you would find, than what a man who is educated, who is smart, who is benevolent, and who knows what he's talking about will say about feminism. I really disagree with that. I think it's just stupid. I think it's really bullshit, and it's just it leads to very dangerous things. Would it mean then that if you don't belong to religion, you're not supposed to discuss that, you're not supposed to question it, you're not supposed to have an opinion about it? I get that it's important to make distinctions between like discriminations and prejudices and struggles that some groups face, and that sometimes maybe their voices need to be heard more and put in the front more, and I totally understand that. But at the same time, like, using the argument that you are not this, you don't do that, so don't talk about it, I think it's just so intellectually poor and inaccurate, and I really disagree with it. And it's something I've done a few times, I think, when it came to men. I feel like for feminism, I never really thought that, but the way I expressed myself maybe gave that opinion, and I just want to say that's not what I think at all, really not. And last thing that I've seen going on a lot, and I am definitely guilty of that myself. I did this mistake and I am so not proud of that, but I think it's just a very difficult thing to navigate. I think when you're an activist, whether you're a feminist, whether you're a vegan, whether you're an anti-racist person, or whether you're an advocate for queer rights, sometimes you deny facts and you deny realities, because it's so difficult sometimes to, when you're confronted to so many people in politics and institutions trying to bring you down, trying to shut you down, trying to, you know, make it so difficult for your voices to be heard. Sometimes it's so difficult to incorporate in your speech, in your theory, facts and realities that go against this very same theory, because it seems like you're giving to the enemy, you know, some tools to bring you down, to discredit your own, you know, speech, your own values, your own battle. But I think we need to take challenge with that. We need to accept that, yes, sometimes some facts are gonna go against, or are gonna nuance, or are gonna be different, simply, not necessarily even going against, but are gonna be different from what we find very comfortable, sometimes very useful, very convenient to say, because we've been used to saying it again and again, reading it, and it's such a, like, almost an automatic thing. Two examples I like to give, and two examples I gave in my video I did in French, where homophobia, for example, or queerphobia more generally. Obviously, queerphobia is everywhere, you know, in big institutions like the army, for example, but I don't think anyone would really deny the fact that it's a lot more difficult to be queer in a rural area where, you know, everyone knows everyone, everyone knows what everyone's doing. Most of the time it's kind of more religious, it's very conservative as well, and you don't have a lot of support. It's a lot more difficult to be queer in that type of environment than to be queer in a capital city, to be queer in New York, to be queer in Paris, to be queer in London. Is that bad to say that? Is that me discriminating against rural people and rural areas? Is it a classist or a classist thing to say? No, it's just accepting this reality. And if we're shying away from that because we don't want to appear a certain way, we're just letting people in those situations, we're just letting them down. We're letting those queer people deal with their bullshit themselves, deal with the struggle themselves. And I don't think that's what we want to do. And also denying those truths and those facts, we are like turning a blind eye to the reasons that bring those consequences. And so we are never going to get to the heart of the problem, and we're never going to find any solutions. We're never going to solve this. I think it's the same with catcalling. Even though catcalling happens everywhere, and believe me, I've been catcalled a lot, and I've been in very unpleasant situations a lot, and I've had so many different types of people do it to me. I have noticed, because I have traveled quite a bit, I have noticed that in some countries it happens a lot more. Is it me discriminating against those countries or being prejudiced? No, it's just facts that are the results of economics, of traditions, of culture, of politics, of a lot of different things. And even in France, even in some countries, in some cities, there are neighborhoods where you are more likely to be catcalled. Am I racist for saying that? No. Am I discriminating against a certain class? No, I'm just stating facts. And I think that as activists, sometimes we don't want to face the truth because they sound bad, and because it's so easy for racist people and all those bad people to just focus on that then, and the discussion is just going to be about that. They're just going to forget everything else we've said. But I think it's our job to be more intelligent than that, to be smarter than that, and to be able to back up our arguments, our theories, and to take into consideration all different kinds of realities if we want to be actually, like, I don't know, if we want to be a serious source of knowledge and of opposition and rebellion. I think that's something we really need to do. So those are things I've been really thinking about. Those are things I've been trying to be more cautious about in my activism. Another thing definitely that I haven't said in my video in French, but I'm gonna say it in this video, is I have now kind of a big audience, I suppose you could say, and something I've been meaning to do for the longest time is try to have people come onto my channel to share their experience, like some lesbians, some people of color, some people with disabilities, and you know, all those different types of experience and of testimonies and of lived experience and moments that I cannot share because I haven't experienced any of that. I really want to start doing it more on this channel. It's something I have been wanting to do for the longest time. It's not something new that I'm discovering. It's something I've been meaning to do for the longest time. But I've been so busy with work, with competitive exams, that I haven't been able, unfortunately, to do that. And I have also noticed that whenever I did some collaboration, like videos with people's experiences or people's participating or posts even, I feel like a lot of people are not feeling confident enough to participate. And most of the time I have noticed it was people of color that didn't really participate. And maybe it's me that doesn't really make it so that my channel feels safe, or maybe it's just the fact that they don't really relate, maybe in a way, because I'm like a white person. I don't know what it is, but I feel like sometimes it's just really hard to bring everyone together to talk about things, and that's definitely something I want to focus on and try to achieve in the future. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video, guys. Let me know what you think of those things. Let me know if you've noticed anything on social media. And yeah, and just a basic last thing I want to say, I feel like a lot of those so-called activists only focus on social media and are very, very angry and very loud on social media. But if you go outside, you will realize that there are people from different generations, different cultures, different backgrounds, and you can't be that loud and you can't be that angry. You can be very radical in your ideas, and you don't have to shift your ideas, but just the way you express them, just the way you educate people, I think it's, you know, it's something to take into consideration, really. And also, I believe that if you are spending so much of your time doing shitty things, like, because honestly I just call them shitty things sometimes, just picking fights with everyone and criticizing everyone who says something that's not perfect, like, you're wasting so much of your time, I feel like. And I don't believe that it's actually real useful needed activism. But that's just my opinion. So maybe I think social media is great, don't get me wrong, it's super important, it's changing lives, and that's definitely something we need to focus on. But we also need to focus on other things in our lives and read books, for example, and watch documentaries and talk to people and go to meetings and all those different things. I believe those two things, like the offline and the online worlds, need to be combined. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. I am so sorry for not producing much content in English. I am so hopefully, yeah, I'm so excited to maybe have more time to film more in English, so hopefully it's gonna be better. But yeah, if you want to stay in touch, don't forget to check out my Instagram and my Twitter. I post a lot on there, and also I have a Patreon for $1 a month. You can, you know, have access to a lot of different things, and I post almost daily on there and I exchange with you guys, and it really helps with the channel. So, and I post mostly in English on there anyway. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!